The Gita, Part 1, delivered in San Francisco, May 26, 1900. To understand the Gita requires its historical background. The Gita is a commentary on Upanishads. The Upanishads are the Bible of India. They occupy the same place as the New Testament does. There are more than 100 books comprising the Upanishads, some very small and some big, each a separate treatise. The Upanishads do not reveal the life of any teacher, but simply teach principles. They are, as it were, shorthand notes taken down on discussion in learned assemblies, generally in the courts of kings. The word Upanishad may mean sittings or sitting near a teacher. Those of you who may have studied some of the Upanishads can understand how they are condensed shorthand sketches. After long discussions had been held, they were taken down, possibly from memory. The difficulty is that you are getting very little of the background. Only the luminous points are mentioned there. The origin of ancient Sanskrit is 5000 BC. The Upanishads are at least 2000 years before that. Nobody knows exactly how old they are. The Gita takes the ideas of the Upanishad, in some cases the very words. They are strung together with the idea of bringing out in a compact, condensed, and systematic form the whole subject that Upanishads deal with. The original scriptures of the Hindus are called the Vedas. They were so vast, the mass of writing, that if the text alone were brought here, this room would not contain them. Many of them are lost. They were divided into branches, each branch put into the head of a certain priest and kept alive by memory. Such men still exist. They will repeat book after book of the Vedas without missing a single intonation. The larger portion of the Vedas has disappeared. The small portion left makes a whole library by itself. The oldest of these contains the hymns of the Rig Veda. It is the aim of the modern scholar to restore the sequence of the Vedic compositions. The old orthodox idea is quite different, as your orthodox idea of the Bible is quite different from the modern scholars. The Vedas are divided into two portions, one the Upanishads, the philosophical portion, the other the work portion. We will try to give a little idea of the work portion. It consists of rituals and hymns, various hymns addressed to various gods. The ritual portion is composed of ceremonies, some of them very elaborate. A great many priests are required. The priestly function became a science by itself owing to the elaboration of the ceremonials. Gradually the popular idea of veneration grew round these hymns and rituals. The gods disappeared, and in their place were left the rituals. That was the curious development in India. The orthodox Hindu, the Mimakasa, does not believe in gods. The unorthodox believe in them. If you ask the orthodox Hindu what the meaning is of these gods in the Vedas, he will not be able to give any satisfactory answer. The priests sing these hymns and pour libations and offering into the fire. When you ask the orthodox Hindu the meaning of this, he says that words have the power to produce certain effects. That is all. There is all the natural and supernatural power that ever existed. The Vedas are simply words that have the mystical power to produce effects if the sound intonation is right. If one sound is wrong, it will not do. Each one must be perfect. Thus, what in other religions is called prayer disappeared, and the Vedas became the gods. So you see the tremendous importance that was attached to the words of the Vedas. These are the eternal words, out of which the whole universe has been produced. There cannot be any thought without the word. Thus, whatever there is in this world is a manifestation of thought, and thought can only manifest itself through words. This mass of words by which the unmanifested thought becomes manifest, that is what is meant by the Vedas. It follows that the external existence of everything depends on the Vedas for thought, and does not exist without the word. If the word horse does not exist, none could think of a horse. So there must be an intimate relation between thought, word, and the external object. What are these words in reality? The Vedas. They do not call it Sanskrit language at all. It is Vedic language, a divine language. Sanskrit is a degenerate form. So are all other languages. There is no language older than Vedic. You may ask, who wrote the Vedas? They were not written. The words are the Vedas. A word is Veda, if I can pronounce it properly. Then it will immediately produce the desired effect. This mass of Vedas eternally existed, and all the world is a manifestation of this mass of words. Then when the cycle ends, all this manifestation of energy becomes finer and finer, becomes only words, then thought. In the next cycle, first the thought changes in the words, and then out of these words, the whole universe is produced. If there is something here that is not in the Vedas, that is your delusion. It does not exist. Numerous books upon the subject alone defend the Vedas. If you tell their authors that the Vedas must have been pronounced by men first, they will simply laugh. You never heard of any man uttering them for the first time. Take Buddha's words. There is a tradition that he lived and spoke those words many times before. If the Christian stand up and says, "My religion is a historical religion, and therefore yours is wrong and ours is true," the Mimamsaka replies, "Yours being historical, you confess that a man invented it 1900 years ago. That which is true must be infinite and eternal. That is the one test of truth. It never decays. It is always the same. You confess your religion was created by such and such a man. The Vedas were not. By no prophet or anything. Only infinite words, infinite by their very nature, from which the whole universe comes and goes. In the abstract, it is perfectly correct. The sound must be the beginning of creation. There must be germ sounds like germ plasma. There cannot be any ideas without the words. Wherever there are sensations, ideas, emotions, there must be words. The difficulty is when they say that these 4 books are the Vedas and nothing else. Then the Buddhist will stand up and say, "Ours are Vedas. They were revealed to us later on." That cannot be. Nature does not go on in that way. Nature does not manifest her laws bit by bit, an inch of gravitation today and another inch tomorrow. No, every law is complete. There is no evolution in law at all. It is given once and forever. It is all nonsense, this new religion and better inspiration and all that. It means nothing. There may be 100,000 laws, and man may know only a few today. We discover them, that is all. Those old priests with their tremendous claims about eternal words have dethroned the gods, took the place of gods. They said, "You do not understand the power of words. We know how to use them. We are the living gods of the world. Pay us. We will manipulate the words, and you will get what you want." Can you pronounce the words yourself? You cannot, for mind you, one mistake will produce the opposite effect. You want to be rich, handsome, have a long life, a fine husband, only pay the priest and keep quiet. Yet there is another side. The ideal of the first part of the Vedas is entirely different from the ideal of the other part, the Upanishads. The ideal of the first part coincides with that of all other religions of the world except the Vedanta. The ideal is enjoyment here and hereafter, man and wife, husband and children. Pay your dollar and the priest will give you a certificate, and you will have a happy time afterwards in heaven. You will find all your people there and have this merry-go-round without end, no tears, no weeping, only laughing. No stomach ache, but ye eating, no headache, but yet parties. That, considered the priest, was the highest goal of man. There is another idea in this philosophy which is according to your modern ideas. Man is a slave of nature, and slave eternally he has got to remain. We call it karma. Karma means law, and it applies everywhere. Everything is bound by karma. Is there no way out? No. Remain slaves all through the years, fine slaves. We will manipulate the words so that you will only have the good and not the bad side of all, if you will pay us enough. That was the ideal of the Mimamsakas. These are the ideals which are popular throughout the ages. The vast mass of mankind are never thinkers. Even if they try to think, the effect of the vast mass of superstitions on them is terrible. The moment they weaken, one blow comes and the backbone breaks into 20 pieces. They can only be moved by lures and threats. They can never move on their own accord. They must be frightened, horrified, or terrorized, and there are your slaves forever. They have nothing else to do but to pay and obey. Everything else is done by the priest. How much easier religion becomes. You see, you have nothing to do. Go home and sit quietly. Somebody is doing the whole thing for you. Poor, poor animals. Side by side there was the other system. The Upanishads are diametrically opposite in all their conclusions. First of all, the Upanishads believe in God, the creator of the universe, its ruler. You find later on the idea of a benign providence. It is an entirely opposite conception. Now, although we hear the priest, the ideal is much more subtle. Instead of many gods, they made one God. The second idea, that you are all bound by the law of karma, the Upanishads admit, but they declare the way out. The goal of man is to go beyond law, and enjoyment can never be the goal because enjoyment can only be in nature. In the third place, the Upanishads condemn all the sacrifices and say that is mummery. that may give you all you want, but it is not desirable, for the more you get, the more you want, and you run round and round in a circle eternally, never getting to the end, enjoying and weeping. Such a thing as eternal happiness is impossible anywhere. It is only a child's dream. The same energy becomes joy and sorrow. I have changed my psychology a bit today. I have found the most curious fact. You have a certain idea and you do not want to have it, and you think of something else, and the idea you want to suppress is entirely suppressed. What is that idea? I saw it come out in 15 minutes. It came out and staggered me. It was strong, and it came out in such a violent and terrible fashion that I thought here was a madman. And when it was over, all that had happened was a suppression of the previous emotion. What came out? It was my own bad impression, which had to be worked out. Nature will have her way. What can suppression do? That is a terrible statement in the Gita. It seems that it may be a vain struggle after all. You may have 100,000 urges competing at the same time. You may repress them, but the moment the spring rebounds, the whole thing is there again. But there is hope. If you are powerful enough, you can divide your consciousness into 20 parts all at the same time. I am changing my psychology. Mine grows. That is what the yogis say. There is one passion and it rouses another, and the first one dies. If you are angry and then happy, the next moment the anger passes away. Out of that anger you manufactured the next state. These states are always interchangeable. Eternal happiness and misery are a child's dream. The Upanishads point out that the goal of man is neither misery nor happiness. But we have to be master of that out of which these are manufactured. We must be masters of the situation at its very root, as it were. The other point of divergence is the Upanishads condemn all rituals, especially those that involve the killing of animals. They declare all those as nonsense. One school of old philosophers say that you must kill such an animal at a certain time if the effect is to be produced. You may reply, but this is also a sin of taking the life of an animal. You will have to suffer for that. They say that is all nonsense. How do you know what is right and what is wrong? Your mind says so? Who cares what your mind says? What nonsense are you talking? You are setting your mind against the scriptures. If your mind says something and the Vedas say something else, stop your mind and believe in the Vedas. If they say killing a man is right, that is right. If you say, no, my conscience says otherwise, it won't do. The moment you believe in any book as the eternal word as sacred, no more can you question. I do not see how you people here believe in the Bible whenever you say about it, how wonderful those words are, how right and how good. Because if you believe in the Bible as the Word of God, you have no right to judge at all. The moment you judge, you think you are higher than the Bible. Then what is the use of the Bible to you? The priests say, we refuse to make the comparison with your Bible or anyone else's. It is no use comparing, because what is the authority? There it ends. If you think something is not right, go and get it right according to the Vedas. The Upanishads believe in that, but they have a higher standard too. On one hand, they do not want to overthrow the Vedas, and on the other, they see these animals sacrificed and the priests stealing everybody's money. But in the psychology, they are all alike. All the differences have been in the philosophy regarding the nature of the soul. Has it a body and a mind? And it is a mind only a bundle of nerves, the motor nerves and the sensory nerves. Psychology they all take for granted is a perfect science. There cannot be any difference there. All the fight has been regarding philosophy, the nature of the soul and God and all of that. Then another great difference between the priests and the Upanishads. The Upanishads say renounce. That is the test of everything. Renounce everything. It is the creative faculty that brings us into all this entanglement. The mind is in its own nature when it is calm. The moment you can calm it, that very moment you will know the truth. What is it that is whirling the mind? Imagination, creative activity. Stop creation and you know the truth. All power of creation must stop, and then you know the truth at once. On the other hand, the priests are all for creation. Imagine a species of life in which there is no creative activity. It is unthinkable. The people had to have a plan of evolving a stable society. A system of rigid selection was adopted, for instance. No people who are blind and halt can be married. As a result, you will find so much less deformity in India than in any other country in the world. Epileptics and insane people are very rare there. That is owing to direct selection. The priests say, let them become sannyasins. On the other hand, the Upanishads say, oh no, the earth's best and finest and freshest flowers should be laid upon the altar. The strong, the young, with sound intellect and sound body, they must struggle for the truth. So with all these divergences of opinion, I have told you that the priests already differentiated themselves into a separate caste. The second is the caste of the kings. All the Upanishadic philosophy is from the brains of kings, not priests. There runs an economic struggle through every religious struggle. This animal called man has some religious influence, but he is guided by economy. Individuals are guided by something else, but the mass of mankind never made a move unless economy was involved. You may preach a religion that may not be perfect in every detail, but if there is an economic background to it, that you have the most ardent champions to preach it, you can convince a whole country. Whenever any religion succeeds, it must have economic value. Thousands of similar sects will be struggling for power, but only those who meet the real economic problem will have it. Man is guided by the stomach. He walks and the stomach goes first and the head afterwards. Have you not seen that? It will take ages for the head to go first. By the time a man is 60 years of age, he is called out of the world. The whole of life is one delusion, and just when you begin to see things the way they are, you are snatched off. So long as the stomach went first, you are all right. When children's dreams begin to vanish and you begin to look at things the way they are, the head goes. Just when the head goes first, you go out. For the religion of the Upanishads to be popularized was a hard task. Very little economy is there, but tremendous altruism. The Upanishads had very little kingdom, although they were discovered by kings that held all the royal power in their hands. So the struggle began to be fiercer. Its culminating point came 2,000 years after in Buddhism. The seed of Buddhism is here, in the ordinary struggle between the king and the priest, and in the struggle all religion declined. One wanted to sacrifice religion, the other wanted to cling to the sacrifices, to Veda gods, etc. Buddhism broke the chains of the masses. All castes and creeds alike became equal in a minute, so the great religious idea in India exists, but have yet to be preached, otherwise they do no good. In every country it is the priest who is conservative for two reasons, because it is his bread and because he can only move with the people. All priests are not strong. If the people say, preach 2,000 gods, the priest will do it. They are servants of the congregations who pay them. God does not pay them. So blame yourselves before blaming the priest. You can only get the government and the religion and the priesthood you deserve and no better. So the great struggle began in India, and it comes to one of its culminating points in the Gita. When it was causing fear that all India was going to be broken up between the two groups, there rose this man Krishna, and in the Gita he tries to reconcile the ceremony and the philosophy of the priest and the people. Krishna is loved and worshipped in the same way as you do Christ. The difference is only in the age. The Hindus keep the birthday of Krishna as you do Christ. Krishna lived 5,000 years ago, and his life is full of miracles, some of them very similar to those in the life of Christ. The child was born in prison. The father took him away and put him with the shepherds. All children born in that year were ordered to be killed. He was killed. That was his fate. Krishna was a married man. There are thousands of books about him. They do not interest me much. The Hindus are great in telling stories. You see, if the Christian missionaries tell one story from their Bible, the Hindus will produce 20 stories. You say that a whale swallowed Jonah. The Hindus say someone swallowed an elephant. Since I was a child, I have heard about Krishna's life. I take it for granted there must have been a man called Krishna, and his Gita shows he has left a wonderful book. I told you, you can understand the character of a man by analyzing the fables about him. The fables have the nature of decorations. You must find that they are all polished and manipulated to fit into the character. For instance, take Buddha. The central idea is sacrifice. There are thousands of folklore, but in every case the sacrifice must have been kept up. There are thousands of stories about Lincoln, about some characteristic of that great man. You take all the fables and find the general idea, and know that that was the central character of the man. You find in Krishna that non-attachment is a central idea. He does not need anything. He does not want anything. He works for work's sake. Work for work's sake. Worship for worship's sake. Do good because it is good to do good. Ask no more. That must have been the character of the man. Otherwise, these fables could not be brought down to the one idea of non-attachment. The Gita is not his only sermon. He is the most rounded man I know of, wonderfully developed equally in brain and heart and hand. Every moment of it he is alive with activity, either as a gentleman, warrior, minister, or something else. Great as a gentleman, as a scholar, as a poet. This all-rounded and wonderful activity and combination of brain and heart you see in the Gita and other books. Most wonderful heart, exquisite language, and nothing can approach it anywhere. This tremendous activity of the man, the impression is still there. 5,000 years have passed, and he has influenced millions and millions. Just think what an influence this man has over the whole world, whether you know it or not. My regard for him is for his perfect sanity. No cobwebs in that brain, no superstition. He knows the use of everything, and when it is necessary to assign a place to each, he is there. Those that talk, go everywhere, question about the mystery of the Vedas, etc. They do not know the truth. They are no better than frauds. There is a place in the Vedas, even for superstition, for ignorance. The whole secret is to find out the proper place for everything. Then that heart, he is the first man, way before Buddha, to open the door of religion to every caste. That wonderful mind, that tremendously active life. Buddha's activity was on one plane, the plane of teaching. He could not keep his wife and child and become a teacher at the same time. Krishna preached in the midst of the battlefield. He who in the midst of intense activity finds himself in the greatest calmness and in the greatest peace finds intense activity. That is the greatest, yogi as well as the wisest man. It means nothing to this man, the flight of missiles about him. Calm and sedate, he goes on discussing the problems of life and death. Each one of the prophets is the best commentary of his own teaching. If you want to know what is meant by the doctrine of the New Testament, you go to Mr. So-and-so, but read again and again the four Gospels and try to understand their import in the light of the wonderful light of the Master as depicted there. The great men think, and you and I also think, but there is a difference. We think and our bodies do not follow. Our actions do not harmonize with our thoughts. Our words have not the power of the words that become Vedas. Whatever they think must be accomplished. If they say, I do this, the body does it. Perfect obedience. This is the end. You can think yourself God in 1 minute, but you cannot be God. That is a difficulty. They become what they think. We will become only by degrees. You see, that was about Krishna in his time. In the next lecture, we will know more of his book. End of lecture.